Welcome to the C-Files, folks. Subscribe, give a thumbs up, help me out with the channel. You'll never have advertising on my channel. I don't do that. Now, crazy week, folks. Apparently, Hurricane Helene was twice as big as Katrina. Katrina was, the main part of the hurricane was a little over 400 miles in circumference. Helene was over 800 miles in circumference. And then the outlining areas were wind shear was affecting people. It was a little over 200 on Katrina, a little over 300, like 350 or so on Helene. So you're talking about Helene affecting over 1,000 miles of area as it went through. And of course, that 1,000-mile area continually changed as it was rolling through. I just got a call from my family member who is leaving from the Asheville area, who was up there on mutual aid, a deputy sheriff. And I mentioned FEMA, and I was told we never saw FEMA until today when we were getting ready to leave. FEMA was nowhere to be found. That's what I was told. I was also told that the devastation is really bad, and that this deputy only knew the area that she was working, but she said it was bad. It was bad, and people didn't. Some folks didn't know how to act, yeah. So I'll have more on that. But she said FEMA was nowhere to be found. I also got news this week that my former partner, the partner I had before I retired, I was working graveyard shift in San Diego as a police officer. And he was my partner when I retired, was involved in an officer-involved shooting and was stabbed in the process. So he was actually stabbed first by the suspect and then was able to shoot and kill the suspect. And this was an off-duty incident. If you want to look it up, you can look it up out of San Diego. And it was just a random attack. Now I know what the news is putting out, and I'm not going to put out the name because it hasn't been officially put out yet. But inside scoop, folks, because I've talked with the officer, I've talked with the sergeant that responded from our department, I've talked with the POA president and some other folks, and basically what happened is he pulled up to Mission Bay, Fiesta Island, where the beach is, to walk his dogs. When he got out of his truck, this 41-year-old 5150, and if you're a California cop, you know what that is, mentally ill person who apparently was off his meds, confronted him. And apparently it happened really quick. And the off-duty officer said, back away from me or I'm going to call the police. And that's when the suspect lunged at the officer and stabbed him. And he was stabbed 5 or 6 times. And the officer was able to get his gun out and shoot the suspect in the chest and killed the suspect. Just a random attack, not provoked at all. folks, these kinds of attacks are occurring more and more around our country. And that's why it's important to secure our borders. That's why it's important to track these people down and deport them or make them responsible for their crimes. I know that there are even citizens in the country over the last 5 years or so that have never been made responsible for the crimes that they've committed because they're in sanctuary states, a sanctuary city, or a soft on crime DA that doesn't want to prosecute someone because they're this or that color or they're this or that intersectionality category, and therefore since their ancestors suffered under slavery or something of that nature, then these people need to be we're not going to incarcerate them. We're not going to make them responsible for their crimes because this is it's like they see it as a form of reparation. Well, they did this, they did that, but you know what? As far as reparations go, we're not going to prosecute them because, they were mistreated. Their ancestors were mistreated or whatever. This is an assumption that's being made. Unless you trace the ancestry of that individual, you don't know if their ancestors were slaves or mistreated or anything like that. A lot of people have come into this country since those days. That was over 150 years ago. So, how many people have come in since then? And not all of them from Africa or from other areas, right? So, this whole critical race theory, intersectionality, reparation stuff is just nonsense. But what's happened is DAs that believe in that stuff are allowing these people to commit these crimes, not be made responsible for their actions, and society suffers as a result. And so people become victims of these criminals and they don't get justice. And yet these judges and these DAs think they're giving justice because they buy into the intersectionality belief system, which came right out of the Frankfurt School out of Germany. And if you're not familiar with the Frankfurt School was a think tank in how to spread communism into America. And they figured out that they were not going to be able to be successful using the economic system that Marx came up with. By the way, Marx got his ideas from guess who? Charles Darwin. Origin of the Species. That was the foundation of Karl Marx's ideas. And then Marx took that into a political realm and used economic principles of the oppressed and the oppressor, and used that to create the Bolshevik Revolution, which turned Russia into the Soviet Union and a communist state. And then there was the revolution that occurred in China, the Red Revolution in China under Mao, and the rest is history. Well, the Frankfurt School, they were trying to figure out, okay, what we did in Russia and what we did in China is not going to work in the United States. So how do we take down the United States? Well, the answer they came up with is that the Achilles heel of the United States is race and race relations. And so it was out of the Frankfurt School that critical race theory was produced, and it was popularized in writings and in the universities and so forth. You know, and the communists always worked through the universities. And then we have what we have today. So they deduced correctly that instead of using economic theory, if they would use critical race theory to weaken the United States, that it would work. They were correct. It has worked. And it has divided the country. And it has a lot to do with the crime wave that we are experiencing in the country now. So, you know, always be prepared to protect yourself from random attacks. You know, it used to be that, you know, you weren't going to be under attack like that unless you got into a verbal confrontation, or you did something to provoke the person, or it was a robbery or something. You know, there was some motivation behind the attack. But with these type of attacks that my former partner experienced, there's no seeming motivation behind them other than just hatred for the other person. And by the way, my former partner would have been in a more protected class, or more of an oppressed class in the intersectionality scale than me. We'll put it that way. Good guy. I mean, I really enjoyed working with him, and we did a good job together. We had a lot of territory to cover, and it was just him and I a lot of times on graveyard, and you know, we came up with a plan and we handled business. But this is just, I don't want to see this. I don't like seeing it. And I don't like seeing it when it's my former partner. I don't like seeing it when it's anybody. Especially when it's young college students, you know, young women in college, things like that. It's horrendous. So we got to get control of our borders and deport people who are not here legally, because we don't know what their motivation is. And we've got to get harder on crime. Justice is not served through the concept of intersectionality and critical race theory. It's not. What we're seeing is that justice doesn't exist under critical race theory and intersectionality. That if you're in the wrong category, in the category of the oppressor, you have no rights when it comes to being a victim of a crime. And people believe this stuff. They believe in critical race theory. They believe in intersectionality. They buy into it. It's almost as if they've joined a cult and they're mesmerized by the cult, and they can't seem to wrap their head around anything that's not within the parameters of the cult doctrine. And if you've ever tried to get anyone out of a cult, you know and understand how difficult that is, because of the mind manipulation, the mind control, the brainwashing that's involved with it. So we have to secure our borders. We have to get harder on crime. And we're going to have to pull our troops back home. The billions and billions of dollars in equipment that we're sending to foreign countries is outrageous. It's obscene. Especially when you have people here in this country that are in great need of those resources and that money. Now, apparently FEMA is out of money. Why? Well, because it all went to housing and food and provisions for those who are in the country illegally. FEMA has been protecting and providing for illegal aliens in this country. And now they don't have money. But you know what? That's okay. I'd rather FEMA not be on the scene because they seem to hinder operations. But not only them, but apparently the Fairview fire chief in Fairview, North Carolina, has that FEMA mentality. Now, I haven't looked up his name or who he is. I'll look it up and give you the name of that individual. But he's the one that's been saying, don't go rescue your neighbor. No, don't take your private helicopter in and deliver supplies and rescue people. No, you're messing with my operation. That guy needs to be fired. He needs to be fired on the spot. People are dying because he won't allow them to be rescued. He won't allow them to receive provisions and supplies, water and food, clothing. When little people get positions of power, they don't know how to handle it. And it goes to their head. When I was in law enforcement, we used to call that being badge heavy. And I knew some officers, a few, not all of them. I mean, most of them were good officers. But there were a few that were badge heavy. Got a Mustang next to me and he's roaring his engine. They were badge heavy. They were a little person that got a lot of power and it went to their head. When people are dealing with what might turn out to be the worst hurricane to ever hit the Appalachian Mountains, you don't need people that are badge heavy out there helping them. You don't need people that have power that's gone to their head out there helping them. You need people who are actually willing to help them. So anyway, that's my thoughts for today. I'll have more. Looking forward to seeing my family member when they get back. And she's told me that she took pictures and she's got a lot to tell us. So look, we'll see what she's got. Anyway, for her protection and her privacy, I'm going to keep her identity private. So anyway, God bless you guys. Stay safe out there. And I'll see you next time on the C-Files.